Welcome to the Outdoors and Holistic Project, the podcast edition with City Girl and Nature. My name is Kwasia, and today I'm joined by Malaika, the Garden and Youth Coordinator at Paper Garden. We're actually here in the polytunnel, so there is a bit of noise around because there's some infrastructure going around in Canada Water. So if you do hear that when you're listening, pay no mind. We're just having some chit chat here in the beautiful polytunnel. But yeah, hi Malaika.
Hi, Kwasia.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I guess I work alongside you, facilitating some of the youth kind of programs, the Gens and the Green Ambassadors.
Yeah.
And it's been about 2 years now.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's flown by.
2 years,
2
yeah.
years,
And I guess when I first met you and just generally along the years, I've heard also that, you've traveled a lot growing up, never like lived in like, especially when you was younger, if I'm right, like you lived in quite a few different places as well. I guess I really like to like explore that a bit today.
Cool, yeah.
In terms of like also how that brought you to where you are now as well in your position here at Paper Garden. So yeah, I guess the question to start with is, how has travel kind of impacted you, I guess?
How has travel impacted me? Yeah, I guess it's all I've known, really. I didn't really have a choice in the matter with my dad's work kind of moving us around from early. Yeah, I think should I start from the beginning and kind of put it in a little nutshell?
Because maybe I jumped too quick into it. So yeah, please give us more context.
Yeah, so my dad worked for the World Health Organization, so that required moving around every few years. My mum and dad met in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and that's where I was born. And then they moved to France. And after that, we moved to the Philippines. And after that, we moved to the US. And I think the constant for me was we would come back to London every few years. And so that's where I was like, I really want to move to London for university. I think that's where I was like, felt called to. I think because of living in all these different places, I felt most kind of connected to a place where all of these people are coming through from various backgrounds, various nations and religions. And so I was just like, okay, London's the place for me. So I came for university and stayed.
Wow, that is quite a lot of countries as well that you mentioned, and a variety. In fact, you've got some Asia there, some America, some that's quite a variety to explore as well, just culturally. And I guess, what did you do for uni then?
So I went to uni for psychology. I think through all that travel, I'm fascinated by people and behaviors, and social psychology was really interesting to me, and why we do the things we do, and how, even though we're so vastly different, we are very, very much the same. So that led me to study psychology. And then, I really wanted to help out somehow, just kind of seeing the nature of the world and the systems that are breaking down people's mental health. I was just like, how can I be a part of change? And I think young people was something that stood out to me. I think I did like a semester or so in educational psychology and environmental psychology, and those things really stood out to me. So that's what really wanted to pursue.
That sounds cool though, like exploring, the psychology of stuff, because I guess sometimes, as you said, like with your experiences as well, it can be a bit overwhelming if you don't really like think through that experience, because it's a lot of change. I know for me, growing up, change wasn't the best thing for me. I didn't really take well to it. But for you was constantly moving around. And I guess, what's some of the like benefits you kind of had of experiencing some of those different cultures? Like, would you say like there's a particular place as well that you stayed that really kind of influenced the way you kind of look at the world as well?
I think moving to the Philippines was something that really impacted me. Just seeing how, just being actually quite at the whim of just whatever nature is going to throw you away. That's the first time I ever experienced flooding up to like shoulder height, and like monsoon season, and then just experiencing the resilience of the people who live there. This has always been the case. You know, there's a wet season and dry season, and how people navigate that, as well as like there's extreme poverty that I'd never seen before. And I think it was just you know, at an early age understanding, oh, the life that I live is not the life that everyone lives. And I think that was quite an important lesson to learn. But yeah, I think moving to the Philippines, going to Asia, being culture shocked was really important, and I think has stuck with me and has shaped me. Did that answer your question?
100%, yeah. I think it's nice that you even touched on even the fact of like nature. I guess in these different locations, did that also make you, is there a difference in nature in USA compared to, you know, Philippines, compared to France? Like, is there a difference?
Yeah. Do you ever get that feeling like, if I don't know if you've been out at like sea, or sometimes, you know, if you're looking up at the stars and you're just like, wow, okay, we're quite small in compared to just like how big and vast everything is. And I think moving to the Philippines and the US especially, I saw the power and the force of nature. So yeah, monsoons and flooding, but then in the US there was like hurricanes. You know, you see those hurricanes on the news that have these names like Irma, and then yeah, in New Orleans, like all these huge hurricanes and earthquakes. And I remember a tornado once, and
Wow.
It's like, okay, yeah, nature is yeah, I mean, we are a part of nature, but nature will make you realize just how, you know, those little things that we're stressing over are not that big, considering how, just immense nature is. Yeah.
That must be quite an experience as well, you know, like people just hear about like what you said, like hurricanes and stuff, but like actually witnessing, you know, some of these like natural disasters, as they say, and like people's day to day and how they adapt. Is this something that you would say made you even more passionate in terms of even with your degree and now the work that you do, with taking that into consideration around, you know, these types of things?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, I remember we were in North Carolina and I saw this, but it was just this long road, and we were driving to South Carolina, and there was just like black skies in front of us and sunshine behind us. It was just like night and day. And the road we were meant to drive down was completely closed off, and people were like, you need to find a hotel that way. We're like, we need to go that way, and they're like, you're not going that way. There is I can't remember the scales of tornadoes, but it's just like, you're not going over there. And we managed to find a hotel where like hundreds of people were crammed into like tiny rooms together, and then the tornado managed to like skip, hop and jump over where we were. And then the next morning we set out on the road. It was beautiful, like this weather, clear skies, but you just saw just devastation. We were like driving past sort of trailer park homes and like billboards ripped off and houses completely devastated, and you saw people just staring at like empty plots where their homes were.
Wow.
Just like, what do I do? And I think those sorts of memories, and there's lots of those things kind of stick in my mind, and it's just like the power of community and coming together, and the resilience of people in facing the sort of natural disasters, and yeah, I guess home as well. I think that the theme of home comes up for me because I've never really had a sort of base or home, and I think the way in which you can create community and make something out of devastation has really stuck with me. And I think that definitely pushed me into wanting to study psychology, and then wanting to be a part of community gardens, community spaces, and somehow find a way to kind of give my body, my labor, my mind to improving any situation I can try and find that is useful, where I'm not a burden but a help. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So hats off to you as well. I guess that's a really interesting journey. Is there any like skills in particular you would say you picked up on through like traveling, any specific kind of skills, or maybe like it kind of sounds like resilience as well, is a strong one in terms of like the changes and some of the scenarios and experiences you went through, kind of thing. Is there like any like skills you'd say traveling taught you?
Yeah. I suppose like there's my answer now, but I wonder what my answer would be 10 years ago. My answer now would be like listening. I think listening is such an important skill, to have, listening without the intention of, I guess communicating and listening, not ready to like respond, but listening really deeply and creating space. I think those are really important skills. But I wonder if you'd asked me that question like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd probably say that's when I was kind of trying to find ways to be more practical. Like, how can I, if everything fell apart tomorrow, could I harvest my own drinking water? How would I be able to do that? Can I use a saw and a drill and these things? Can I create a shelter? Can I make my own food, make my own medicine? I think that was the drive for me 10 years ago that led me to this work. But I think now, having like gained those skills from traveling and from different ventures that I kind of dabbled in, I would say listening. Yeah.
No, that's really important. I guess that saying that they say, exactly what you said, was like listening to understand, not listening to reply, is how I've seen it put, like exactly what you just said. But that is deep. Yeah, listening is important. I think nowadays, a lot of the time we are talking more than we are listening, especially in our society. So what's some of the best ways to get started, on this journey of getting to where you are right now in terms of gardening, and, what's some of the best kind of ways to get into it? If someone is kind of looking to try to find themselves or find a place for them within like the nature, outdoors kind of, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, like
scene, I don't know.
like nature connection.
But like organizations, I guess.
Okay.
So like, what's the best way to kind of access somewhere like Global Generation, or specifically, for instance, now you work in Paper Garden. What's the best way for someone to get into working for like an organization like Global Gen?
It's difficult because I want to say volunteering, but I know that that's not always possible. Like, we have to pay our rent at the end of the day, and like, when you come back from your work, are you too exhausted to go into a space and volunteer? Like, it's not always possible, but I would say that's kind of how I got into it. Was I was working a few different jobs, really unhappy in that work, and wanted to find connection and wanted to learn skills. So I found Glengore Wolf Garden, just in Peckham. Have you been there?
No,
Glengore Wolf Garden?
That's local.
Yeah, it's really local. You should check it out. It's a really lovely space. Kind of like this, where it's kind of built on top of concrete, but a beautiful, lush growing space. And it's a lot of people coming in, lending a few hours, growing organically and sharing lots of different skills and like chatting over the food that you just grew. So that, I think, that was an amazing experience for me. I think if you have somewhere local, and there's this amazing resource on Capital Growth, you can find local community gardens and spaces where they might need volunteers. So looking for spaces that exist, and if they need a few hands, if they don't, even just asking. Like, I think a lot of these spaces, to grow throughout the year is a lot of labor, and in order to keep running, you need funding, and people are so busy on the ground or behind a laptop that having an extra pair of hands is always great. So I find that's the best way, is physically being able to get into a space and be around people. Like, I remember this older Belgian woman and this older Jamaican man just like showing me how powerful and incredibly playful food growing is. And those were the things that I was like, I want to do this. How do I do this? Not just as like a hobby, not just as something to pass the time or something to like volunteer for. How do I make this my work? And that changed my trajectory. And it's just like physically being around people who care a lot about the climate crisis, about herbalism, about food growing, about regenerative agriculture and community activism. If you can find those spaces in London, we're really lucky that there's so many different spaces across the city. Go spend some time, talk to some people, lend a hand. And a lot of those spaces are trying to be a bit more accessible in terms of language and physical access. So it's important that we show up and if I'm physically unable to access the space because of whatever disability I have, I think it's important that those spaces kind of change to that. So showing up and being like, I want to be in this space, but it doesn't have X, Y, and Z. It might not. Sorry, I'll probably dive too deep into that, but like I think it's maybe not our own. If we're disabled or if we are marginalized in some way, we shouldn't have to do all of that labor to request and require. But I think showing up in those spaces and making people think about it is also really important. So it's like a diamond, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Don't worry, I'm understanding. How did you actually start to work with Paper Garden? So how did you get the opportunity to work with them?
I was working a garden maintenance job, which like greatly improved my horticultural skills and physically made me quite fit for garden labor. And I applied to a job at Global Generation that I was so underqualified for. They were looking for someone who's like worked with young people, worked with volunteers, maybe cooking for a school experience. I was like, I have zero of that, but I'm just going to go for it because I really align with what the charity stands for. And so I didn't get that job. I just kept applying to other organizations that were similar. And I then got a job in just garden maintenance. So something that I already was doing. They were hiring at Global Generation. So I was just maintaining planters around the King's Cross area with like this little trolley, just wandering around, just taking care of plants. And then because of the nature of the charity, there's a lot of opportunity to grow skills that you want to grow in. I think there's just a lot of focus on personal development. So, the directors and my managers were like, okay, do you want to come and volunteer or help run a volunteer session? Do you want to come and work with the primary school kids? How do you feel about going into this school and helping out and trying and seeing what fit, what didn't? And so that led me to, I started working in a local primary school off Euston Road, which is like severely, like one of the most polluted roads in London. And there's just like this little primary school and this beautiful garden. And I just kind of developed that space. And then that gave me the skills to then start a garden in a local high school in Camden with Global Generation. And then, because I live south, I was like, I really want to be involved in the Paper Garden. So at that point I was in Story Garden and I was like, look, it's really local to me. Can I come to Paper Garden? So one thing led to another, and I've started here, mostly just helping with the food growing, and sort of opportunities opened up to work with the young people. And that was I think one of the most challenging things, but challenging in the way that I was like, this is something I need to be doing and learning. And they they teach us a lot more than I feel like I teach them. But it's a lesson in patience and also a lesson in what's going on in the world right now through their eyes. And how can we scaffold and how can we support, but also how can it be collaborative?
It's interesting to hear you say that was your journey, because I would have never known that. Just seeing how you are, like when we're facilitating and stuff, I would have thought that you've always done stuff with youth, because like you do it so well and so passionately, and it's clear, like it's not like, it doesn't necessarily look like you went to go and learn about this. Like it looks like it was something you naturally had within you. So maybe that's maybe something you didn't notice about yourself, but
that's really sweet.
You definitely have that natural passion and gift to work with young people too. Just the way that you interpret a lot of the skills you have through the gardening and through your experiences. So what are some of the challenges that come with growing, like some of these plants and edibles on concrete as well, because we are on top of concrete essentially, even though this garden is so beautiful, and even the surroundings. Like, what's some of the challenges or differences as well around how things are done?
So I think there's two parts to this question. The first part is more the like practical side of well, noise. Noise is a really big part because there's quite a radical element to growing in the concrete. Like when you see like a dandelion just like cracking through concrete, there's quite a radical kind of like, yeah, we're here. We shouldn't be, but we are here in between like huge institutions. It's the same in Story Garden, between huge institutions, huge buildings, and we're just here. So there's the practical side of things with the noise. You know, we're in an area, we've always been in areas of construction. So in terms of personally and like as a team, it can be, you know, there's a lot of studies on how noise affects us. It affects wildlife, it affects us, really impacts our well-being. So I think that's really hard, especially trying to like grow year round, and the energy it takes to just withstand the noise is a lot. And then the actual, you know, physically growing, putting these plants in these beds. We do a lot of our stuff is raised beds or pots. We also use hugelkultur, which is the kind of like mounding process of using a lot of logs and wood chip and compost and soil. And the idea is, and that's we try and do a lot of no dig. The idea is that we're building soils just as you would if you were growing on top of existing soil. Is we're building it up, so we're not going to disrupt it with forking it over or digging it, other than digging in a plant. But yeah, so drainage is a huge issue. You know, when it rains here, we're in a bog, in a swamp, and there's some plants that don't love that. I think we're building up really lush soil, which means a lot of the things that don't actually really enjoy rich soil or really want some like drier conditions don't love it here. So it's a good practice of the right plant in the right place. So maybe don't bring your really sort of desert loving or like really hot Mediterranean loving plants in the shady part of this garden, or in the puddles of the garden. It's a good practice as a horticulturalist, as a food grower, to just be like, okay, I need to observe the space and see what the limitations are. And there are many. Growing in smaller containers, not having access to the soil system is difficult. I think that's the second part, I think, to the question is, as individuals, as people who want to be really connected to the land, we are creating a land, but it's temporary. It's only been kind of shoveled in the last 2 years, so it doesn't have this deep time of connecting between trees and the whole this mycelial network we talk about of the fungi and the bacteria and the microorganisms have been doing their job for time underground and making beautiful, healthy plants. These plants are disconnected. They kind of live in these islands around, as much as they are beautiful. And I think there's such power in growing in this radical way. There is that element missing. And I think for people as well, we need that connection to the soil. We need that connection to the knowledge that's held within the root system. There's something, you can grab some of the soil here that's really healthy that we've made. We compost a lot of the stuff from the kitchen and the garden, and there are those microorganisms that release serotonin. Like that still is there, but there's that extra layer of like being connected to that deep, deep soil. So I think on a personal level, I think a lot of my colleagues can agree that it's just like, it's awesome we have this opportunity to do this and teach other people how to do this, and share skills. But at the same time, there is that layer missing. We're not underneath the concrete, and we're not in the subsoil, and that feels temporary, and it feels not as deeply rooted. And I think there's a layer of spirituality that's in that that we're not connected to. And yeah, I think when you're in a place that's on top of concrete, there's other problems that arise of like disease and other things you would see in other spaces, but I think it's more apparent here because things are grown in isolation, and there's a limited biodiversity in the space as much as we're trying to invite more of that in. Yeah.
And on the other side of things, what are like the positives?
Yeah, just deep dive into what's terribly wrong with it. But actually, yeah, the positives are like you get a class of 30 kids from the local area who don't know this place exists, and you kind of, it's like going through a secret magic door and you open up this space and you're like, what? You know, like we get them to dig under this layer of wood chip and it's like, that's concrete, like that out there is the same under here, but look what you can do with it. So it's our garden is an educational space, and I think that's one of the biggest positives is like whether it's a windowsill or a balcony or a small plot or like wherever you are living, it is possible to grow something. And I think that's so cool that we get to, and the kids get so excited. And I think as well as challenging, also we get a lot of corporate volunteers and they come into this space, sometimes meeting their colleagues for the first time, which is crazy to me, but like being in a part of a large company and they come and volunteer together and they're just like seeing what's possible in these spaces. And I think it's going to become more and more important to include these kinds of spaces, if it's rooftop or in between buildings, as we move further into the climate crisis, because concrete is, you know, we're absorbing heat, we're creating this really like heat intensive zone, and we need to dissipate that, and gardens are incredible ways of doing that, as well as all the benefits of bringing people together, eating together. We've been doing that since humans walked the earth, and like we sit around the fire together, and that's quite like deep rooted in us. So there's a million benefits of it. It's just, yeah, it's challenging, I think, as a gardener, as a food grower. But when you take that step out and actually see why we're here and what we're doing it for, it's amazing. And we get to be a part of this change.
I guess what is some of the like best things that you enjoy and some of the activities that you specifically do? I know you touched on it briefly there, but like,
Yeah, we do a mix of activities. Our team is made up of a lot of different like creatives, artists, carpenters, makers, storytellers, as well as like really skilled people who've worked on farms, people who've worked in other gardens. So we do a range of those activities. We try and bring in everyone's strengths, and we also bring in the strengths of the people we work with. So so other than like, you can see there's a lot of seed sowing, transplanting, the kind of seasonal tasks. We'll do those activities with people who come in, but we also do a lot of ceramics. We co-created and co-built our building with the local community, especially a lot of young people. So we learned how to use lime mortar instead of concrete. We used felled trees from Epping Forest to use the bricks of our building. I'm sure those are in other shots people can see online as well about the co-build. But there's just like, I think it's a mixture of learning new ways of being as well as diving into old ways of being. So I mentioned about sitting around the fire. We do a lot of like fire making together, like with the flint and everything, as well as like cooking over a fire, sharing stories. We'd go really deep into values and reflection and creative writing, public speaking. We built a cob oven, so using natural materials to build. The young people have carved with Yes Make partners who are on site with us, incredible makers. The young people built benches in the shape of like, I think it was an octopus, and so they got to do like wood carving. There's just so much magic in the team as well as the people who we work with, and there's always this desire to bring in more skills. We do so much art. We've done different art activities together. and always cooking. Eating and cooking together. I think those are what the young people love to do the most when we're together.
I guess that leads on to my next question about what's some of the ways that you keep the young people engaged with gardening and with the garden and nature and connecting it, whether it's through arts, but what's some of the ways that keep them kind of engaged? And also, I noticed that I know I come here for under 5 sessions, disclaimer, with my son Zuri, but there's also like little tools that you have here as well that is suited for littler children. I guess, what was the thought processes behind this, and like, I guess what keeps them engaged with all of this?
What keeps the young people engaged? I have to remind myself to do this a lot because I can kind of get carried away about how I want to design a session or what I want the young people to do. But I think one of the ways that Global Generation, Paper Garden, Story Garden has thrived and why the young people are engaged is co-creating and really highlighting youth voice and making sure that they are at the table saying what they want to do, where they want to be, where they want to go. We're still a charity. We can't, like, I remember we did an activity together, you and I, and we asked them to like write down the goals for the year, what they want to do. And someone was like, let's go to China. And I was like, I like the way you're dreaming. We can try and make it happen, but there's a lot of funding applications we need to write together. And they have done that. They've done writing an application to build the pizza oven that they ended up building. So I think to keep them engaged is making sure that they are at the forefront. They're saying what they want to do and that we're meeting that within reason. As well as just, keeping it exciting. There's a mixture of like, these are skills we think that you should have and you are welcome to partake. I think also that's a key is like, this is not an obligation. We actually just want you to be in this space and enjoy it. So it's like, come in and learn how to use this saw. But also maybe you and your friends actually just want to chill at the back of the garden and talk about that teacher who really pissed you off today. Because actually sometimes that's all they want to do is just vent. And they need a space to do that with loads of youth clubs shutting down around the country. I think there's an element of, bringing people into the space and allowing them to just be, as well as being like, these are some things that we can do. These are some activities we can do. And also I think for the older young people is a project, is a goal, something that we're going to achieve together. So we went to Silwood Estate. You and I, we went and did we turned with the help of a local community, youth club and a nursery, turned that kind of derelict space where people were just like chucking their rubbish. We turned that into a beautiful garden, alphabet garden. And the little nursery kids love it, and it was just like there's showing that there's an impact and there's a purpose to what we're doing together, rather than just like, okay, we're going to saw some wood and plant some plants and these are skills we want. It's like, we're going to saw some wood and plant some plants, and it's going towards creating a space for people where some of these young people live. And it's like, I did that, I was a part of that, this is my legacy here, especially in an area that's undergoing incredibly rapid change, is like having that sense of ownership and participation and voice. I think that's a big part of it.
And definitely a sense of belonging as well, I guess. Because I noticed as well, one of the things that they enjoy the most, like especially in the spring and summer months, is the water. And all of them, they love to water. And that in itself is giving back to, all the plants and the garden in itself with all the sun that we get and stuff.
Yeah. And I think also there's so much climate anxiety for young people. They're receiving all of this messaging, whether it's in school or from parents or news or social media. It's just like, it's an intense world to grow up in, and there's all this anxiety, and actually creating a space where it's like, where do I even start? How do I even face this? Like, I'm recycling at home, what else can I do? It's just like, actually you being in a space that grows food for pollinators, or you being in a space to learn something to share with another person who it then dominoes. And it's like creating a sense of hopefulness rather than hopelessness. I think that's a big part of it as well.
I know, like, you briefly touched on it as well when we spoke about noise as well, and like just being in this space. I know this space is amazing and all the work that's going on, but a lot of community and spaces are being disrupted by larger kind of infrastructures and stuff like that. How's the wildlife and the communities being impacted from what you can see?
This is something I really want to put a lot more intention and thought into monitoring. And we've been discussing with someone called Tranquil City, or this group called Tranquil City, and they help with monitoring noise and impact from a lot of these kinds of things like demolition and building works. So it's something that the major works are due to start towards the end of the year. So we have enough time to come up with a plan that we can monitor with the young people, as well as staff, of like, how are these noise levels going to affect the insects and the other animals here. We have 3 chickens on site. They were incredibly impacted by the noise when we first moved to site, and they were doing all this really intense, like hammering groundwork. They weren't laying eggs. They were stressed.
Wow.
There's definitely measurable ways, and I'm curious about how we do that. But yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be really intense. I think it will impact our programs in the way that, you know, we bring a year group into the garden, or like 30 kids into the garden during the day, and if that aligns with heavy duty machinery and noise, you know, there's no use us shouting over the noise, and that also isolates a lot of people with noise sensitivities. So I think it's going to be hard as a team to navigate it. It might mean that we might have to borrow and like partner up with other spaces to still facilitate and make sure that we're still engaging with the local community and the young people. So yeah, noise is going to be a big part of it. Dust is going to be a big part of it. I don't know how the garden will be impacted, but I reckon like breeding is like for birds especially, noise is incredibly disruptive. So yeah, we have like connections with ecologists, and I think we are going to work hard to connect further with how we can monitor right in this garden how wildlife are impacted. And then I think it's just through conversation, as well as maybe like questionnaires or different interesting ways we can gather the data on how our community feels about the disruption right on the doorstep. Yeah.
Because I know the community definitely, like with what's going on with Canada Water, have been impacted a lot, because it's like kind of feels like it's happening to them. They didn't really like ask for this, or there's a lot of, even with the young people, you know, like how they talk about demolishing Tesco's, like, not Tesco's.
Yeah.
You know, like, we don't want a new Tesco's, we want that Tesco's.
Exactly. It's huge change. Yeah.
All these types of things that are going on. But I do know, and I've seen how Paper Garden does bring that kind of safety, you know, something that they can come all together and speak about those worries and those kind of fears, and, you know, have a space where they can just release that and do some gardening, or just being able to just be as well. And funny enough for me as well, even Paper Garden has enabled some of the people locally to know about these changes, because they've just kind of seen it and not known like what are they actually doing. But I guess because it's British land, isn't it, that have partly funded or Global Generation for Paper Garden, so like that's where the link is. But I know for a lot of communities and stuff, there's not really a base or space where they can actually know what's going on as well with all these big infrastructures. And also there's like loss of woodlands as well. Fortunately we have Russian woodlands close by as well. So we took the young people to the British Land offices, and they saw firsthand what the next 10 years will look like. And I think it was super shocking. A lot of primary schools also go over there and look at it, and it's a lot of the young people are seeing what the changes will look like. And I think there's some maybe families that are maybe signed up to the newsletter that comes out to see what's happening, but a lot of people don't know
what this area will look like and the kind of level of disruption that's going to happen. We're already seeing it with like the trees that are coming down and the works that are happening. But yeah, these places of memories, you know, we were occupying Frankie and Benny's for a bit after they shut down, and it's like, you know, I remember the young people going into that space, running around it because it was like, oh, it's not a restaurant now, we can just run around, and it was great fun. But it's like, oh yeah, you're not going to come here anymore for your birthday parties that you remember. Like it's shutting down and it's getting kind of flattened. And I think there's like, you know, you were saying at the beginning, you know, change when in your childhood like that is really difficult to deal with. So yeah, I think it's, and like what I was saying earlier about youth voice, we take them to the offices and we encourage them to ask those questions like why, or like how are you going to make sure that you do this and this, and it's encouraging the young people to ask those difficult questions that might make, you know, staff at BL a little bit uncomfortable. Like, how do I answer this to a 7-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old? Like, yeah, you have to state it plainly why you're doing this. Like, what does it mean to be a landowner? What does it mean to change this area for the local people? Like, they have to answer to those questions, and those questions are coming from young people who live right here. So yeah, I think it's really hard to navigate. Like you said, like we are partially funded by BL, and there's parts that are, yeah, it's complex, it's hard to hold those two things at the same time, and I don't think there's a right way to do it. It's all part of a bigger system that needs changing, but I think the only way that I know how to change it is through the inspiration of the young people, and I'm not there yet.
So in terms of even funding and like with the organization, I guess you touched on it just now, but also like now in the times that we're living in, and fundings places like this can be quite tight as well. So how are you and like navigating that? I guess must be quite challenging.
It's quite challenging. It's hard. I think it's hard. I think a lot of charities and yeah, nonprofits and people are feeling the pressure, the cuts to funding left, right, and center, and that means more people fighting over the same. Fighting feels extreme, but like more people competing for these pots of funding. And you know, I've heard back from several trusts and different funders that it's like they've had maybe 100 to 1,000 more applicants than in previous years. So the deliberation process is really hard, and then they can't give us feedback because they have too many applications that they would have to respond to, and they're short staffed. It's just like it's wild. It's tough. We have had some successes, which I'm really happy to celebrate. But yeah, it's kind of pushing us towards thinking about how we diversify our income. You know, we have this beautiful space that you were recorded in earlier, and it's like, okay, this is a beautiful space to hire. Can we do that? Like, is this another avenue? So, and events, and trying to find different ways to keep going. I think everyone's kind of in the same boat.
For people that are in like small communities, and there's like a plot of land, for instance, that they're utilizing to grow stuff, is there any like permissions needed? Do you know?
Oh, this is a bit beyond me. Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, I guess it depends on if it's council owned or if it's privately owned. Yeah, I think that's a minefield that I'm not so familiar with.
No problem. With the young people nowadays, as we know, a lot of them are kind of having to find a balance between, you know, video games, computers, screens, exams, and loads of, you know, things going on around them that also it's hard for them to be managing. I guess what can be done to incorporate more kind of outdoor activities for well-being and stuff like that?
I think just having spaces open, and I think also having spaces that feel safe. So that means like having adults who are fully trained safeguarding and enhanced DBS, and like know how to work with young people across different ways they might show up and meeting their needs, even if it's not like a facilitated activity, but having okay, we have Russia Dock Woodland and Surrey Docks Farm and Stave Hill. Having those spaces feel safe, having those spaces feel like there's someone you can go to if you need something, having a toilet, having there's activities that you can engage in. And I know that's a bit more complex in terms of having volunteers or staff funded, etc. But I think having spaces where young people can go and feel like they are invited to be in, as well as knowing that there is someone to make sure that that their needs are met. Because you can go to some like green spaces and there's not a toilet within sight, there's not an adult, or like, if is there anyone around here first aid trained? If it's a bit later in the evening, is there lighting? If I'm a woman walking, if I'm a young girl, young girls together, like, do I feel safe in this space? I think having safer green spaces with access to activities, I think that's important. I think in schools, a lot of schools have these outdoor areas that are completely tarmacked over. And I think there's some schools that are actively trying to change that. And we have the privilege of working with a few of them. But just like enabling young people to access their outdoor spaces, not just like, okay, it's lunchtime, go play ping pong or kick the ball about, but also that's access to green space, is just like having sporting activities. I think football is so popular, and I think that's such when I ask people like, when's the last time you spent time outside, and people are like, oh, I played football with my friend. And I think having space and time to be outside, whether that's just friends hanging out, or facilitated activities, sports clubs, etc. I think that's really key. I feel like there's so many other ways, but those are the ways that come into my mind. What do you think?
Me, I think that, I guess, some of the ways that young people can get out school-wise, what I would say is that the curriculum, I'd start there.
Yeah.
I'd say the curriculum just needs to change in terms of allowing young people to be outdoors, learning more, not just necessarily just like being outdoors for outdoors' sakes, whether that's doing outdoor activities, but maybe like doing science outside. So that's like one of the ways that come to my mind immediately, because I know that even with myself when I was back younger and that happened, it helped a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe just making it a thing where the outdoors element is not necessarily like a specific task outdoor, but maybe it's incorporating something they already do, but just going outside.
It's like treating the outside space as another classroom.
Yeah, so like, as I said, science, obviously you do PE generally outside but like doing other topics that even might not seem, even arts, like there's a lot of nature and things outside that can inspire that. Creative things, music outside, things that go hand in hand even with nature and outdoors, that can easily not feel challenging to do. Maybe science might be like a chemistry or something might be more complex because you might need a Bunsen burner or whatever it is, but
life sciences,
doing stuff like that. And then generally I'd say making things fun, I think that's the basics with young people generally.
I think I forgot what I was going to say. Being outside, as like, you probably, I don't know about you, but like being outside, I feel as though the problems that you see in the classroom will dissipate. I remember working with SEND students in a high school, and their kind of TA would come in and be like, oh, he's been really violent today, like just be careful. But he literally comes into the garden and that's just like washes out of him, and he's just like so chill, so happy to be in the space, really wants to engage, asking loads of questions, and is like ready to learn. And it's like, I think all those, the challenging behaviors that teachers might face, in an ideal world, I feel like going into a classroom, getting out of the classroom and taking the lesson outside, you might see those things minimize a bit. Maybe not for every child, but I think it would just be way more beneficial.
Generally, I think that's my opinion anyway, in terms of school especially.
Take school outside.
Yeah, just go outside. Even if it's like, as I said, incorporating the same lesson but doing it outside.
Yeah.
I just think that that's one of the, on a basic level, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
But yeah, can you tell me what's coming up for Global Generation, Paper Garden?
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Cool. So it's actually our 20-year anniversary this year. And that was in King's Cross, and we were taking young people out into the countryside, and we evolved. We had a cafe, we had several different skip gardens. We were in Regent's Place in a basement, and then we were invited to Canada Water, and it's evolved. We've worked with incredible communities and created incredible spaces and programs. So 20 years celebrating this year. We're carrying on the same programs. We're hoping to throw a spring Eid event, and we'll be working with the Brunel Museum to facilitate some family workshops in their garden space. And overall, now that we are in the space, it's taken us 2 years to move and build the building. Now we're here, we want to work closer with our partners. So shout out to Restorative Justice for All and the Brunel Museum and Time and Talents. Really just want to make that relationship really strong, and lots and lots of food growing.
And I'll definitely be here, and also the under 5 sessions. They're just amazing. I know this is a recent thing for Paper Garden, but definitely people, I think this is something that more families and mums, dads, carers should try to start to participate in more locally, wherever it is, but definitely I know here it's amazing, the under 5 sessions that run on Friday mornings. I guess, where can people find more about Global Generation as well?
So our website is globalgeneration.org.uk. We're Global Generation on socials as well, so Insta, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well. Some great YouTube videos on projects we've done in the past. And we have a newsletter as well, so if you want to stay updated on different programs and events. But we've recently updated the website, so there's a lot more info on there if you want to check all of that out. That's... And
where can people find you?
Me! You can find me here in the Paper Garden. Paper Garden.
No problem. Thank you so much for speaking to me today. And guys, I'm so fortunate to be able to be facilitating this podcast here. If you are able to donate to Paper Garden, that would be truly appreciated to help them give back more to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.